with the introduction to the Mishnah Berurah on Shabbos. It says here, some aspects of Torah observance correspond to the head of the heart. They are sources of his spiritual vitality, such as belief in Hashem and in his Torah. Shabbos observance is also one of the foundations of this belief. By neglecting this essential aspect of Torah observance, one forfeits his entire spiritual life force. He is left in this world with only his bestial soul and has nothing with which to come back to life for the resurrection. Shabbos observance also helps to cleanse a person of all his sins, as the Gemara states in Shabbos 118b. If one observes Shabbos properly, even if he has sinned, like the generation of Enosh, he will be forgiven, as is written in Yeshaya. Fortunate is the person who does this, and the man who supports it, guarding Shabbos from desecration, and guarding his hand from all acts of wrong. Do not read from desecration, rather forgiven him. And this moichel. The expression observe Shabbos properly is used since there are 39 malachot, categories of forbidden activities, which branch out into many derivatives, which is, it says at Toldos. The Talmud Yerushalmi in chapter Klal Gadol describes how Rabbi Yochanan and Reish Lakish discovered 39 malachas for each of the 39 categories. 39 derivatives of each of the 39 malachas. The Gemara states that one must observe Shabbos properly without violating any of these details. But as we'll see, there are exceptions. If it's a pekuach nefesh situation, matter of life and death, then obviously that overrides. One can perform malachot in those cases.
Okay, good.
Hey, where's Gavin disappeared to now?
I have no idea.
Martha? Oh, there's Gavin now. I'm going to put this, I shouldn't put this away quickly for one sec.
Guys, sorry, I got kicked out there. I don't know what actually happened. I went onto my calculator to go work out what is 39 by 39. So it's 1,500. That's the combinations for this. That exercise that Reish Lakish and these guys did, that's a hell of an exercise, to work out the other 39 derivatives of the 39. So if you take 39 by 39, you get just over 1,500 combinations. Quite amazing.
That is.
That a lot.
Okay, guys, let's go into the Gemara. Thanks, Kev, very much. All right.
Yeah,
so,
thank you, Kev. Very interesting.
All right, so we are on the end of the 64th daf. So the Gemara now asks, let's say an actual thief is liable to the twofold payment only if he denied his guilt with an oath. In other words, what's happened is it's saying, look, what did we base this on? Is that we were talking about the verse where there was a custodian who claims falsely that the deposit was stolen, and he's liable to the twofold payment only when he confirms his claim with an oath. So too, when we learned the Kal V'chomer, there was a dayu. So the Kal V'chomer is that if somebody that originally had permission acted like a thief and stole, so too somebody that never had permission, they have to pay back twice. But just like the custodian, where we get the rule from, basically has to swear an oath, in fact, that it was stolen from him. And if he's caught lying after the oath was saying or made to the article owner's oath on his behalf, only then does he have to pay back twice. But if the homeowner believes him and he hasn't taken an oath, he only needs to pay back the compensatory amount. So he's saying so too that dayu would apply to a theft, because we cannot make the target area more stringent than the source area. So the source area being the custodian, and the target area being an actual thief. So just like a custodian would have to take an oath to be eligible for the twofold payment if he's caught stealing, so to a thief would actually have to take an oath denying his guilt. But obviously something's wrong with that, as we know, because we know that can't be the case. Why can't that be the case? It's because by pure logic, you don't believe the thief. If he steals for a living, why would you believe what comes out of his mouth? At the point where the custodian lied, he was an honorable member of society until he was not, like most politicians.
All.
Gavin quite rightly corrected me there, and he's 100% correct. So the Gemara answers that it should not enter your mind to say so. In other words, it shouldn't enter your mind to say that an actual thief would have to deny his guilt to make him obligated. And what's the source? Because you can't use the kol v'chomer of logic because of the applied constraint in the target area from the original sourcing of the text. Because it was taught in the Brisa, Rav Yaakov says, the verse he, in other words, the thief shall pay twofold. So what it's saying is, that was in chapter 22, verse 3 of Shmot. Guys, there's a lot of noise in the background. Gavin, do you think it's coming from your side of the phone?
I wonder if it's my phone. I don't know, because I'm on my phone and you never used to complain before. Right. So I'll have my laptop hopefully tomorrow. I hope so.
That's fine.
I'll put it on mute.
Okay. All right. So what we're saying is that it shouldn't enter your mind to say so, because it was taught in a Brisa. Rabbi Yaakov said, the verse states, he, meaning the thief, shall pay twofold. So that means even without an oath. Now, you wish to say that the verse applies to the twofold payment even without an oath. But is it perhaps not speaking about anything other than where the thief denied his guilt with an oath? You may say this was not the intention of the verse. So the Gemara explains on what basis does the Brisa assert this was not the intention of the verse. Abaya said, if that was the intention of the verse, then let the merciful one not write in his Torah, he shall pay twofold with respect to an actual thief, and let it be derived that he pays twofold through a kol v'chomer from one who claims a claim of theft by a thief as follows. If even in the case of one who claims a claim of theft by a thief with respect to a deposit entrusted in his care, at which case he was originally given it legally, whereas the article that he stole, in this case, came into his possession permissibly, the verse states that he should pay twofold. Then obviously in the case of an actual thief, where the article that he stole came into his possession illegally, is it most certain that he pays twofold? So accordingly, why do I need the verse, he shall pay twofold, in Exodus chapter 22, verse 3, to be stated? That the merciful one wrote in respect to an actual thief. We've learned this before. It must be to teach he is liable to the twofold payment, even without having denied his guilt with an oath. So what we are saying is here, if you apply the kol v'chomer alone, you can't make it more stringent than a custodian, and a thief would be allowed to take an oath to deny his guilt, and you can't trust a thief. So therefore, this verse was needed to say that he doesn't have to take an oath, specifically for this reason. Now, the only thing I'm not quite sure I understand is if it says it so explicitly, why do you even need the kol v'chomer? Just saying, guys. That's what I'm not quite sure. Anyway, the Gemara asks, but does this clause, if being found, will be found, indeed come to teach us this exposition detailed above? Meaning, if being found, will it be found, is an amplification that teaches us to apply the twofold payment to all items. And one who expounds it to teach that if one admits to fine, he is exempt from payment, even if witnesses come forward afterwards. So it's needed for this expression because it seems like we learned that source from elsewhere, because it teaches us another lesson. Because the verse states concerning the twofold payment, okay, if being found will it be found, the theft in his hand he shall pay twofold. So when it says the theft in his hand, I would only be able to know that a thief is liable to make the twofold payment if he actually steals with his hand. Okay? In other words, we're not even saying, for example, that it has to be in his hand at the time that he's caught. Because how often does a thief keep the article on his person? Not often. So when we say theft by his hand, we mean that he directly stole it, even if he isn't carrying it at that time. Doesn't mean that he has to be caught stealing it. It will be after the fact. But what we know from this is it means that he's still liable for the twofold payment if he steals with his roof, his courtyard, or his enclosure. Therefore, the Torah states, if being found, will it be found, implies anywhere in his possession. So let me just give you a perfect example. I'm living next to my next door neighbor, and his sheep comes into my property, and I close the barn behind the sheep. Now, I never actually stole it from my next door neighbor. His sheep wandered into my property. I simply didn't let it escape. And therefore, it's not from my hand that I actively stole it. What it is it means I allowed it to stay in my premises, even though it didn't come to me by my actual hand. Okay, we have a furry fan of the shear on Arthur's side. Right. Okay. Now, instead of just simply stating if the stolen article will be found in his hand, the Torah uses a strange expression. Okay? It says, if being found, will it be found? Because that indicates wherever the stolen article is found at the moment of theft, the thief must pay twofold. So, in other words, you can accomplish the theft. It doesn't have to be in your hand directly, and you can accomplish the theft indirectly, where the animal wandered in your yard and you keep it, and you're still eligible then for the twofold payment, not just the principal. So the Gemara answers and says, okay, if that's so, the clause if being found will be found teaches only one law. Either you being found, or it's being found, or it will be found. So why does the verse say, if being found, will it be found? Because it teaches you two things there. From the very fact that the verse changes its form of expression, as well as the fact that it changes its tense as well. In other words, in the one pasuk, there's an extra word, and in the other repeat of the statement, it's changed the expression. So it means it teaches us two different things from there. So the Gemara then states the words above, stolen article and lav, and it was used to teach Rav's exposition. Remember that? And that was revive the stolen article to be as it was when he stole it. In other words, to revive it, to let it live in the same value as it was taken. So if you stole a cow and you let that cow half starve to death, or it was dying of disease, you have to make restitution to the time period at which you stole it and it was in good health. So the text now says, according to Rav, a thief pays the principal according to the value of the stolen article when he stole it. But he pays the twofold payment, the fourfold and fivefold payment, according to the value of the stolen article at the time he is sued in court. So again, say you pay back 5 times for an ox. Okay? Then what you do then, guys, is you pay the principal amount at the time at which it was stolen, because you have to make restitution at what it was worth in its healthier state. And your penalty amount, which is fourfold, plus principal, which is 5 total that you're paying to the article's valued worth, is paid not at that period, but upon when a person is judged at the court. Does that make sense, guys? Guys?
I want to ask you something. Do you have to, when he's found guilty of 4 or 5-fold payment or the 2-fold payment, can he pay the monetary value, or does he have to actually get five other sheeps?
No, you pay the monetary value because you'll never get 5 other sheep. That's exactly that value. If you're paying for that value, say you don't have cash. It's a good question. Say you don't have cash. You would take the financial equivalent of whatever you can have cash-wise to sell, as long as it hit that value according to the court, and you make restitution in a different way, but it's not like carrying damage. Theft is something different. Is that if you remember in carrying damage, what happened is that it was the damaged party's responsibility to recover from the article that money by selling it. That's why we gave him choice quality land, because he would be troubled to sell it, not the damaged party. But a theft isn't awarded that kindness, because the damager is, because it might not have been intentional, even if it was, then he receives full payment in cash. So, Gavin, this is what I'm saying. With a tam ox, you would get the value of the attacking ox to the value of the body of the attacking ox. Okay? So what I'm saying is, whose responsibility is it to sell? The damaged party. Because that ox is tame. When an ox is moored and the owner has been forewarned, he has to give choice property or cash, because choice property can be sold and turned over for cash quickly because it's so highly valuable. So in other words, the more responsible the person is for the damage, the easier we make it for the injured party to recover their loss. In the case of a theft who acted completely illegally and not through negligence, then it has to be a cash equivalent. So he has to sell his assets in order to pay back and make restitution from the person he stole from. If he's got...
But normally a thief, can I just mention something? Normally a thief has no money. So I don't understand how a thief would actually be able to pay. I'm just saying, you won't know, I don't think, but it must have been really hard. I mean, a thief who steals an ox and he has to pay 5 times, he's never going to be able to come up with this money. It's unlikely.
So it's a good point, but there are a couple of things that you've got to realize. Is that number one, most of us have businesses where we provide a product or service and have big overheads. Guy has no overheads. He's just getting something for nothing. So he probably has more money than the average person. That's number one. Number two, it's not... He probably, if he has stolen all this period of time and never been caught, he probably has acquired a reasonable asset base, because again, he has no expenses like the rest of business people, and it was meant as a deterrent so that it would never happen again. So in terms of what would happen is, if he couldn't pay it back, he would become a slave to the Jew.
So that was my next question. So he becomes a slave. Okay.
Yeah. Now,
okay, thank you.
Okay, so what we're saying is here, the Torah basically states that a thief pays twice the value of the article that he stole. Let's just take a normal article. Once for the article itself as restitution, and a second equivalent amount as the fine. So Rav is teaching that in any event, the article underwent a change in value between the time it was stolen and the time the thief was actually sued in court. This generally happens not for the twofold payment, because garden shears remain garden shears remain garden shears. Only animals can become sick and emaciated from starvation. So then the value deteriorates. So that's why it uses an example of the actual amount. So you've got the mammon, the compensatory amount, and the kefil. So the kefil is your penalty payment, okay, your knas. And that's valued at the time of court. So what that means is, if you steal a keg of wine worth 4 zuzim, and the value of the keg subsequently decreases to 1 zuz at the time the case is brought to court, you still have to pay 4 zuzim as restitution for the principal, and 1 zuz for the kefil payment. So again, let's just take a normal article that's stolen. And we're talking about price fluctuations now, Gavin. We're not talking about an animal that gets sick or starves. Let's just take a normal article. On the market, the Chardonnay is worth 4 zuz, right? At the time it's stolen. So now what happens is, because it's a what do you call it? A non-living article. You only pay back twice, the principal amount and the compensation. So now it's dropped to 1 zuz. So what happens is you have to make restitution in court for the compensatory amount. So you either give that bottle back, which is a problem. You can't do that. You can't return that article because it's now worth only 1 zuz. So there's an opinion that says if you still got the article and it's still in existence, you can return that and then pay the penalty. But there are other opinions that say, why should the owner now be able to receive less value for money? Because if he had it at the time before the market price went down, he could have sold it in the interim. If the thief has said, I'm taking nothing from you and returning what I took, plus I'm paying compensation, it's all very well. But if the price of it died out, then the owner wouldn't have a chance to get rid of it at a decent value. So according to that opinion, it's marked at the time of theft, whatever it's worth, for the compensatory amount. The penalty is worked out what that amount is at the time of court. So again, I steal a bottle of wine from you, it's 4 zuz. Okay? Then the case is months later, and all of a sudden there's a flood in the market of that special Johnny Walker Blue. Say, for example, it's now available everywhere and there's a special on it macro, let's just say. Now the price diminishes. Now I give it to you as a thief and I turn around and say, look, I've made restitution, plus I'll pay the penalty and I'll get you another bottle of Blue Label and we're done. It's not fair to you. Why is it not fair to you? Because I kept it for a period of time where you suffered a loss. Had it been in your possession, you could have sold it before the price crashed. Does that make sense? So the compensatory amount of the one bottle would have to be at the time of the value of the theft. The penalty amount could be at the present time, even though it's lost value. Do you see what I'm saying? Just nod if you do. Good. Okay. So,
Dan, one quick question. What happens if it goes up over time and becomes more valuable?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's a good point. We're going to go through that now. I just want to finish this point, but I'm going to go through that now. But I want to tell you what happens if you steal and slaughter or sell an ox and a sheep, and then you become liable to the fourfold or fivefold payment. So, for example, if a sheep, you pay the principal in 3 times the amount. If it's an ox, you pay the principal in 4 times the amount. Okay? Now, there it's different because the animal can get sick or become emaciated. Okay? So, you pay the restitution of the principal of what it was valued when it was in fitness of health when it was stolen, but the penalty amounts can be on the present value of the animal, as long as you guys understand how that works as well. Does that make sense?
But the question is, the point is also that you got to the point where it changes its status from a calf to a full-grown beast. Because then the thief can claim he doesn't have a ox anymore. He has from a lamb to a ram.
What are you trying to say, Kabb? I'm trying to understand.
They claim that if they keep the stolen animal for quite a long time, like a lamb eventually becomes a ram, and then the lamb and the ram are different things. They're not the same.
Are you saying when it goes through puberty, it's worth more, and then what do we do if it appreciates?
Yeah, but that's not. Okay. So they're saying that the thief may say that it's not a lamb anymore, that it was originally stolen. It's a ram. So it's not. So it's
What do you mean?
It absolves them.
What do you
which
mean?
it
It's
He's
shouldn't.
saying it's become a different product.
Yeah, it
he's
evolved
saying,
from
yeah.
a lamb to a ram.
Okay.
And,
Okay, so that's again
Yeah.
appreciation. It's Arthur's question. It just means that it's valued differently now that it maybe has become sexually active and is able to breed. And that is also an issue of appreciation. So, for example, if a foal, which is a small horse, is stolen, and now it becomes a stallion of reputable worth, and there's the appreciation, what do we do there? So we'll discuss appreciation now. But what I would appreciate is, let me just finish this. I'll finish.
Kevin, you must have loved that.
I'll get back to you right now, Kevin, on your question. So what I'm saying
Much appreciated, much appreciated.
So according to the one thing that you've got to bear in mind is most opinions state that you're only paying what the animal was worth in its natural state if that article that was stolen was missing. In other words, say you bought that wine for a zuzum, and it's now worth a zuz, but the person has the wine and can return it. In most opinions, we let him pay that, and he replaces the wine with another wine or the financial equivalent of the present worth. It's only when the article is lost that he has to pay it at its initial worth, but not if he could bring it back. That's according to some opinions, because it's only when you're paying compensation, you're compensating for what the person no longer has. But if you return the article itself, there are opinions that say that suffices, plus as the principle, plus you pay the penalties. There are other opinions that say that it doesn't suffice because it served you a loss while in possession of the thief. And therefore, why, if he's really wanting to compensate you, how do you get compensated if he's let the animal deteriorate to the degree that it is slaughtered, or it's emaciated, or it's sick, etc.? So the problem is, like, say, for example, it's a working animal, but by the time he slaughters it, it's now worth only meat, which is less than a workable animal. So there are two opinions. The one says that you still have the article intact, that you probably, that in that case, you just return the article. And others that I'm sure object and say, well, the thief let it deteriorate and the original owner couldn't have gotten rid of it in time, and he robbed him of that opportunity. Okay, so we're going to talk about evaluation. It is coming up in the next daf or so. Let's just see if we can get there. So the Gemara explains what's Rav's reasoning for ruling this way. Because the verse states, stolen article and lav, which are apparently superfluous. Why are they superfluous? Well, we went through it, that if it says stolen article and lav, if you just say lav, then stolen article is superfluous, because you know that you've limited any stolen article to things that are living. So we expound it as a different principle, as revive the principle, in other words, a stolen article, to be as it was when he stole it, meaning in its former glory. Okay? Now, Tosfot explains that this exposition actually teaches us two things. Firstly, it tells us to revive the principle to make it whole as it was at the time of the theft. And second, it tells us that we revive the principle only, but not the twofold, fourfold, or fivefold payment. And they paid in accordance with the stolen article's value at the time the thief is sued in court, but not at the time at which it was stolen. Okay. Now, one of the reasons is, just see something here. Okay, so the Gemara challenges Rav's ruling from a brisa. Rav Sheshe says, I say that Rav stated this law when he was drifting into sleep, otherwise he never would have stated it. Now, we said this before, that when he uses that term, he's not insulting him. He's saying he's such a genius that the only way he could have made such a mistake is if he'd been drifting into sleep and wasn't of his usual sharp caliber. So in actual fact, it's a compliment. Does that make sense? Right, the cat.
Sorry, I was drifting off. What did you say?
Are you being funny, Art?
No, I heard you. I'm making a joke when you're drifting
So
off. I'm a genius.
Rav Sheshet
Perfect.
came up with a ruling that's a compliment, the ruling that he came up with. Is that what it's saying?
No, what he's saying is he didn't insult him and said, well, if he could have come up with that comment, he must have been half asleep. And saying he would never have been that disrespectful. When Rav Sheshet is disagreeing with Rav, he's saying Rav's such a genius that he could have only have made that sort of comment if he was drifting off to sleep. It's indicative of the fact that at his normal self, he never would have made that comment. So it's not seen as a criticism, it's actually as a praise. So why does Rav Sheshet not agree with Rav? Because Rav Sheshet said, I say that Rav stated this law when he was drifting into sleep, otherwise he never would have stated it. And what law are we talking about here? Is we're saying that because it was taught in a brisa, if a thief stole a lean animal and he fattened it, I think, guys, you remember us covering this ground. We did deal with it before, ages ago. So he stole a lean animal and he fattened it. He pays the twofold, fourfold, and fivefold payment according to its value when he stole it. In other words, apparently this contradicts Rav, right? Because he ruled the fourfold and fivefold payment are assessed according to the value of the stolen article at the time the thief is sued in court. Now, at this point, the Gemara understands Rav's ruling as pertaining to all cases of increase or decrease in value, even when the change in value is brought about directly from the thief. So we're saying that in this particular case, it's exactly what Arthur and Kevin were talking about, is this is a case of appreciation. So the Gemara says, hang on, when you talk about appreciation, it's a little different. Because the thief can say to the owner, I fattened it up and you will take the payment. Meaning that the Torah penalizes the thief to pay twofold, fourfold, or fivefold, only for the article that he stole. In this case, it can't be considered that he stole the additional fat, since it was he, the thief, rather than a natural development of the animal that brought about that additional fat, because he was super good to it. So he's not liable to pay the twofold, fourfold, or fivefold for the additional fat. But, and this is to answer Kevin's question, if the animal increased in value due to either price fluctuation or when the animal became fat in the course of its natural development. So, for example, it's heavier now, it's adult, as opposed to a young animal, and it developed sexually, so it's worth more in the breeding market. That's a natural development. That's nothing that the thief did over and above the course of duty to keep the animal alive. That's a natural development. And then he pays a twofold, fourfold, and fivefold payment in accordance with the animal's value at the time that the thief is sued in court. So if the thief turns around, guys, and says, well, why should I pay more? It's because why didn't he come and be honest that he started before? He was caught out now. So why is he allowed that mercy? We're not talking about when it was fattened up. We said when he didn't, and it naturally appreciated due to a price fluctuation or the fact that the animal developed, as you said, sexually from a young animal to an adult, and it was worth more. The thief doesn't deserve to get off the hook from natural means of price increases, whether it's market-related or developmentally related, because he stole the animal. He never came right and confessed. It was he who got caught out, and he would have been quite happy not to pay anything had he not been caught out by witnesses. So that's his problem. It's one thing if he fattened the animal up with his own money, because then we say he spent money over and above the call of duty, and therefore he pays what the animal's natural development would have been about. Does that make sense, guys? We'll end off on this note.
Damon, what was that term for twofold payment with the K? I read it yesterday. What You just why did they introduce that term? That's the why I read it. I went over it yesterday.
Okay, are you talking?
The sorry, I forgot.
Careful.
Why was it? Why all of a sudden do they introduce it?
Because it's a specific term related to a knas, a penalty payment based on a application of principal value. Because there are different penalties. There's penalty payments for negligence. There's a penalty payment, say, for example, for a slanderer, for a rapist. Those are set amounts. But this is based on a percentile term, based on principle. So it's got its own